It may be a new era of Villanova basketball, but Kevin Willard still plans on keeping the main line the home of guard you. And is the next great Villanova guard already on the roster? Acaden Lewis may be a true freshman, but his game has scouts drooling, coaches talking about maturity beyond his years, and even some whispers of a potential one and done type player suiting up this year for the Wildcats. Just how good is he? How important is he going to be to this year's team? And what might his ceiling be for his career as a Wildcat? We've got answers next as we do a Kaden Lewis deep dive on Holy Nova. And hi, everybody. I'm Matt Janis alongside my co host David White. This is Holy Nova. We're part of the Big East Energy Network. David, it is good to see you again. I was worried about you after what happened to your alma mater, North Carolina. We've brought you over to the dark side. You've embraced Villanova basketball culture. You're breaking it down with us, but you are still a Tar Heel at heart. You were at that opener on Monday, the Labor Day game against TCU. Wasn't too much fun, was it?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I only count the game from 8 o'clock to about 8:15. After 8:15, I don't know what happened. That
You had some fun
aliens came
tailgating, and you
down.
don't even remember it, right?
Yeah, the Monstars came down and they stole all the talent. I don't know.
Well, it was not good, and we gave you a week off to lick your wounds, but here you are back, ready to break it down. And we want to thank everybody because our numbers are starting to creep up, and it's all because of word of mouth here on the internet getting us out there. But if we want to go to a bigger audience, we need your help. Make sure you like the video at the bottom of the screen. Turns out, David, that is actually important. Everybody says it on YouTube, and there's a reason why. That's critical in the algorithm.
You got to smash it. Just break your screen. You're hitting it so hard. Ring that bell. Do whatever the kids say on the YouTubes.
Our kids may watch a little bit of YouTube, and I think their favorite part of the videos is always where they say, smash that subscribe and like button. So please do it. Do it. We can use all the help that we can get. Speaking of getting some help, Villanova got some in the offseason. Kaden Lewis, the top 40 prospect in the country, signing with Villanova late. Remember, Kevin Willard obviously taking over the job late in the process after the Wildcats had to wait for him to end his postseason run. Acaden Lewis was a commit to Kentucky. He decides to open up his recruitment. Willard had been after him while he was at Maryland. Villanova had been after him under the previous coaching staff, and the Wildcats and Willard both finally land their man. Lewis comes in. This is a kid, a lefty point guard. He can really break it down off the bounce. His crossover, it will make you drool. It is impressive to watch him carve up a defense, but still a young kid. What are realistic expectations for him as a rookie, and how excited should Villanova fans be?
In 3 words, I can tell you, I don't know.
That's not podcasting. Oh my goodness, we gotta yell
It
at each other. We
depends.
gotta have a debate. We know everything.
I like it. I've watched his film. I've watched some highlight reels of him. He does a lot of things well, but he's going to be a freshman, and it takes time for freshmen to come along. That's just the long and short of it. Is he going to be where he just hits the ground running? That's possible. It's possible that it will be end of December, beginning of January before he really gets his feet under him and he starts playing really good basketball. I think we're going to see it at some point this season. It's just a matter of, are we going to see it that first game against BYU, or are we going to see it at the beginning of Big East Conference play?
And that's $1 million question, isn't it? I think I agree with you wholeheartedly on that one, because one of the reasons why I've been talking about with this Villanova team, I think that they will be much better in terms of their conference standing than their overall record, is because I'm not sure what it's going to look like in November, quite frankly. You have a true freshman that you're really relying upon to not carry the entire load, but to be a huge part of this attack. Can he do it right away? He certainly has the talent, he has the skill set, but that's a big ask, particularly for a guy that is not universally viewed as a one and done. There are some scouts that are starting to whisper the possibility that he could be that type of player, but it is not a unanimous decree, nor is it even a consensus thought that he has that type of top end talent. And you look at the competition, BYU is going to be a top 10 team. Michigan's going to be a top 10 team on the road against Wisconsin, even Pittsburgh at home. Who knows what the Panthers end up being, big 5 games. You're going to play some tough ones in non-conference play, and you're going to be relying on an 18-year-old who's going through it for the first time. But at the same time, I do think when you look at what this kid's capable of, you look at the way his game has matured over the years and the improvement that he has shown. It hasn't been a little bit of improvement. It has been linear, almost to the degree of exponential growth in terms of how much better he has gotten. A fringe 4-star who turned himself into a top 40 recruit in the country, and he did it based on work and competitive nature and determination, belief in himself. Those are all buzzwords that you love to hear from a guy that's going to be important inside your program. And the biggest thing about Acaden Lewis is his ability to get into the lane. Now, my biggest question
Mhm.
is, can he shoot the basketball? And does he try to do too much? But you know, this kid, when you watch the way that he can make things happen off the bounce, that will play in a Kevin Willard system.
I would say, yeah. I mean, he loves to get downhill, which that's what Kevin Willard wants to do. He wants to set the high ball screen. He wants to let his guards go downhill and make the right decision. But what you just said about is he going to stay on the ball too long? That's going to be a real question. Is he going to make the right read? Is it going to be, oh, I'm at the rim, I got to force it up? Or is it going to be, well, I got a guy in the corner, let me hit him there? All of those things. And not only is the competition tough in the non-conference, there's going to be some tough environments. You're not playing in front of 5,000 seat high school gyms anymore. These are big time college basketball arenas. I mean, BYU at the what is it, T-Mobile
In
in Las
Vegas, yeah.
Vegas.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that arena is going to be rocking. Are you ready to go? Are you mentally strong enough to know if you miss a shot, but I got to take the next one and I got to make it? When fans are getting on you, are you mentally strong enough to block all of that out? And that's a real question that only he can answer. And unfortunately, with this being Willard's first year and the amount of turnover, there's also not much known about who's the leader on this team. Who's going to be the guy who goes to him and says, "You're good. Don't worry about it. Next play." Because that guy's going to be just as important to Caden Lewis's growth as he is.
Yeah, and there are a lot of question marks surrounding this team because of all the new pieces and
Mhm.
because, quite frankly, Kevin Willard's trying to establish his culture and trying to build it back up to a version of what it used to be at Villanova. You know, count up to we've talked about it before through. I don't think a tremendous fault of his own. It was kind of situationally based, but it kind of got away from him culture wise because they were in such a desperation mode to string together the wins to survive another year. Kevin Willard does seem to be building with more of a long term vision, and he's trying to put pieces in place that fit and that can kind of grow together. And I think Caden Lewis is a big part of that. He's a guy that you look at again. I know there are some scouts that are making the whispers on the rounds of potential one and done if everything clicks, but he's I think most people view a 2-3 year guy. And you know, we heard coming out of the open practice in the summer whispers of there's an awful lot of Jalen Brunson in his skill set and the way he plays, the way he goes about it, the type of competitor he is. And you have to like that. And remember, Jalen Brunson's a guy that got better and better every single year it was at Villanova.
Yeah. And I hate to say this for Nova fans, but quite honestly, you don't want this kid to be a one and
It
done.
is a fine
If
line, isn't it? Yeah.
if he does great, okay, maybe you're all right with it. You look at a tournament bid, but this seems like the first piece to Kevin Willard, where in 2 or 3 years, when he's had a couple of recruiting classes, a couple of times through the portal, has more continuity on his team, that he's going to be a key piece to what could be a long tournament run, a real Big East run. And for the comparisons to Brunson, I mean, what Brunson got that this guy's not going to get is Brunson got to sit behind guys and watch a lot of basketball, learn a lot from guys who had played a lot of college basketball before him, and he got better. You get better watching basketball sometimes. So I think that he will be very good. I think he's going to have to learn by being thrown into the deep end and say you either sink or you swim.
Yeah, there is obviously no Ryan Arcidiacono on this roster. There's no doubt about
Mhm.
it. And clearly, Jalen Brunson was a huge benefactor of having Ryan Arcidiacono there his freshman year, and that's something that he will have to overcome. Now, you have a Devin Askew who has been around
Mhm.
college basketball. I mean, this is his fifth school. He has literally been around college basketball. He's been around the globe playing this sport, but he has been through it. He has seen a lot of things, and by all accounts, has been a really good teammate so far this
Yeah.
year. We'll see how that dynamic goes as Lewis starts to improve, and maybe it costs Askew a little bit of the ball in his hands. That's something Kevin
Mhm.
Willard's going to have to figure out. And to Kevin Willard's credit, that's something Kevin Willard's always been really good at figuring out everywhere he's been. So I got pretty good faith that he'll be able to navigate those waters. But yeah, it's different. There's no doubt about it from where Jalen Brunson was, where Villanova is when they came in as freshmen. And I think, Jalen Brunson was a McDonald's All-American.
Yeah.
Kaden Lewis was just a half step below that. Now, there are scouts that think because he started so far under the radar that's why he never got to that level. But his talent indicates by where he was at the end, especially what he did on the Team Durant circuit. He is that type of player, but that remains to be seen. He's got to play that out at the college level. But let's talk about some of the things that he
And
does well, some of the skill sets that he brings to the table for this Villanova team. We talked about his ability to create and to get downhill. The crossover. If you have watched the Kaden Lewis highlights, you will notice how many times it features the crossover move. It is sick. I mean, there's really no other way to describe it. And you can just see defenders start to cheat to try to defend against him pulling the string on him. And
mhm.
while college defenders are going to be a little bit better, and that's going to be harder to do, the quickness and the handle translate to the college game, do they not?
Yeah, for sure. I think what he's going to have to do is what's the next move? Because college defenders are going to be better about being in help. They're going to be, you can beat the first guy with that crossover and with the handles. It's what do you do when you come to the next guy? Do you do you kick to the open man? Which I think that Nova, the other four guys on the court, should be really excited because if he's playing downhill, there's going to be a lot of people crashing to try and stop the drive, which is going to be a lot of kicks. So Zion, Stanford, you better be able to hit a three because you're going to have a lot of them. You're going to have a lot of open ones too.
Yeah, I think that's where Bryce Lindsey also could be a guy
Mhm.
that really has some opportunities when he's out there. And now, how much will they play together? Because those are two pretty young guys that would be on the floor and with similar skill sets, you could argue, and undersized. So that'll be something that you have to keep an eye on. But Lindsey's that type of shooter by all accounts. Stanford is certainly a guy that's working to develop that three-point shot. We saw him make it in stages at Temple. He's a great mid-range jump shooter, and you feel like that with the ability to get into the lane the way that we have seen on all the tape from Acaden Lewis, he's going to create some space for Stanford to be able to hit that 15, 17-foot jumper, and he might wear some teams out with it.
And then the other thing for him is just going to be he's a lefty. He goes to the left a lot. The college coaches aren't going to let you get to your left hand. They're going to tell guys to sit on your left hand and make you go right. So what do you do in that situation? Are you prepared to have that handle and that finish with the right hand?
That is the one nice part, though. The people that you talk to that watched him closely on the recruiting trail, that right side really improved over the course of his career.
Mhm.
I mean, it still is. I mean, he's a lefty dominant player. There's no doubt about it. And there's some wrinkles that you can bring to the table because, while, yeah, college players are smarter than high school players. They're going to understand scouting reports and know you're lefty and try to take that away. But it still has trickle down effects on a defense, doesn't it? I mean, you've been in
Yeah.
the room trying to work on defenses against a lefty dominant guy. You can get the players to understand that he's lefty. They're going to adjust on the ball, but it's all the help stuff that kind of gets thrown out and thrown off when you're dealing with a guy that can go that well to his left.
Oh yeah, the help is off. You have to get the right hand up to guard him on the shot because he's coming this way instead of this way. The ball's in a completely different place. I mean, being a lefty adds so much offensively beyond just skill set. It's just you have to defend him differently than you have to defend 90% of guys in college basketball. And even if you have a guy who's sitting on his left hand, if he can get into the lane with his right hand, you're still having the same issues with guys crashing down and open shooters.
The other thing that is a big thing to keep an eye on with Acaden Lewis. Kevin Willard kind of alluded to it. He's been pretty open about it with the media that he has talked to this summer. CJ Moore had a big story on it in The Athletic a few weeks ago. SI has written about it. He was on John Rothstein's podcast. Really, wherever he's had the opportunity to sing the gospel of Acaden Lewis, Kevin Willard's been out there doing it. So he feels pretty good about what he has out of his rookie. But he did talk about two things that need to improve for Lewis right now. The consistent shot. It is not a bad looking jump shot. You watch his form in high school or on the summer circuit, it looks like when the ball comes out, it's going to go in. It's not a funky release. It's not necessarily all that slow a release. It's a fine looking jump shot. He just didn't go in to the degree that you needed to go in to play the position that he does. But that's the beauty of going from high school to college. That's where the work comes in, and the repetition and the coaching can really take you from an average shooter to an above average to good shooter. And that's what Villanova needs him to become.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, his shot, he's not falling back on his shot. His form looks fine. It's just muscle memory at that point. He's going to be on the gun a lot this summer, putting up a lot of shots. And I'm sure he's going to improve in that facet of his game. But his toughness, it's exciting to see a guy who made such a big leap from the national recruiting perspective. So he improved his game to such a level that either he was being slept on before or he got so much better that he forced guys to start respecting him. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does with the fact that he was at Kentucky. He signed with Kentucky. Mark Pope went out. He got some guys out of the portal, some older guys and Kaden Lewis saw his minutes starting to go down, so he got out. So it's going to be, what does he do with that information, knowing that Mark Pope didn't necessarily disrespect him. He just got more proven guys. But is he going to come out with a chip on his shoulder to say, see, I'm the guy. I'm that dude that you should have rode with?
That has been the one thing that you hear a lot of people knock him for, the fact that, he's committed to Kentucky. Mark Pope worked so hard to land him on the recruiting trail, but did he view him more as a project? And is that why he went out and hit the transfer portal so hard and brought in guys that played the same position to give him some time to develop? Nothing wrong with that. But if he needs time to develop at Villanova, the Wildcats will be okay with that, but it might mean that next year looks not quite as successful as Villanova fans are hoping for going into the year. But the caveat there is, remember, as popular as Pope is in Kentucky right now, and he is an alum, beloved, replaced Cal, who they couldn't stand anymore, got to the Sweet 16, which while, if Cal had gotten to the Sweet 16, I don't think that would have been good enough. But after Cal, they were quite
Big
pleased with
Blue
it
Nation will turn on you in a second.
Right. So how much was it if you're Pope, you're thinking, I'm going to go get me some physically mature guys that are more proven commodities at the college level? I think Acaden Lewis can be this. I know these guys are that. Maybe Lewis's ceiling is higher, but the floor for those other guys for next year is in a better spot. And I think that is more what we saw there than Mark Pope thinking Caden Lewis isn't ready yet next year or can't be a go-to guy in the first year. I think he just was wondering how much time it would take Acaden Lewis to make the adjustment, and he didn't necessarily want to
Yeah.
take that chance, whereas Kevin Willard can afford to take that chance. Is his development, he's got plenty of time to get that figured out.
Obviously, not being in Mark Pope's head, but I think I agree with that. I think that you get a guy who you know can do the job, and you have a Caden Lewis who you think is going to be great, and maybe it takes him a couple months to get there, but by January, February, he's the guy who's getting most of the minutes because his ceiling is higher and he's reaching that potential. So, like, I don't think it's a slap in a Kaden Lewis's face. I think it's just we can't wait until January and February to hope that you get there. We're going to get a guy who in January and February can, I know, or at least I think I know, can go win games right now because he's done it other places.
Yeah, I think November, December is certainly paramount, and that's where for Kentucky they've been kind of digging themselves some holes, and it's hurt their seed, especially with the type of schedule Kentucky plays year in and
Hmm.
year out. But as we talk about Acaden Lewis, going back to the jump shooting for a second, Kevin Willard's kind of set that magic number at 36, 37%. Willard went as far to insinuate to CJ Moore, the athletic, if he can hit 36, 37%, he's a one and done type of player. So that I thought was pretty high praise. And for him to come out
Hmm.
and flat out say that, I mean, Willard is a guy who seems pretty down to earth and kind of tells you what he thinks. He's not out there and painting false platitudes. He's going to give you the blunt, honest, this is what I'm thinking. It gets him into trouble from time to time.
Yeah.
See how he exited Maryland last year. It wasn't ideal, but he gives you what is on his mind. And I thought that spoke volumes of, I don't think he's there yet. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be talking about it quite as much because then it looks like he's a one and done type player. But I think he thinks he
Yeah.
has a chance to get there. And then B, and this is also important, as he's learning to run the point at the college level, if he isn't able to knock down shots at a clip in the mid 30s, that's where it gets interesting for Villanova because you'd probably like to play him a little bit with Devin Askew out there. But Askew's kind of a streaky shooter as well. You
Hmm.
can't necessarily afford to have two guys in the backcourt that are hit and miss with the jump shot. That's going to be something that's going to be interesting to see how Kevin Willard handles it also.
Oh yeah, I mean it's hard enough to be out there with a point guard that the defense doesn't respect beyond the 3-point line. Two guards that are just having off games. All right, we're just going to pack the paint. You take the shot. You got to make it. But yeah, I think that it's going to be if he can hit 36, 37%, given the rest of his game that I think is going to translate. Your handle translates, layups translate, even runners translate. It's the 3-point line. If he can be at that clip, yeah, he's probably a guy that's getting serious looks from NBA scouts. I don't know if that's a good thing for Villanova. Maybe you want him to be at like 34%
Right.
and stick around for another year.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I mean, I
but,
think that's a really good point because realistically, even if Caden Lewis is a one and done guy who is a mid to late first round pick, which I do think a freshman is a Caden Lewis's ceiling.
yeah.
Um, what does that translate to for Villanova in terms of team success? Seems to me the ceiling there with a mid to late first round pick is probably a team that sneaks into the second weekend, Sweet 16 team, very similar to what we saw from Kevin Willard last year at Maryland, right? I mean, would that
Mhm.
be fair to say if Lewis is the real deal and his potential one and done? Wouldn't you rather he has flashes. You sneak into the tournament, maybe you steal a game, but then you get a Caden Lewis back for year two, second year in the system, another year to get even stronger, to keep working on that shot. Now that's where you start to look at an Elite Eight, Sweet 16 type of team. And that's what Kevin Willard's trying to build for. Plus the momentum that comes from the recruiting trail and the transfer portal. If you can say, hey, we're going to put you next to that type of point guard, a Kaden Lewis out there, I think that's the type of kid that people will want to play with next year, which is a big deal also.
Well, not just that momentum of getting, but the momentum of saying we have gotten better every year. If he has this one and done type year and you finish third in the Big East with Sweet 16, somewhere in that Sweet 16 round of 32 area, and then he leaves, do you take a step back because now you're starting from step one at point guard again? So like you go Sweet 16, make the tournament, and then maybe you grow back. Whereas if it's let's make the tournament, okay, now let's take a bigger leap to get to the second weekend, and we have time to bring in that next point guard to play under him, to learn from him, all those kind of things.
The other question mark with Acaden Lewis is, and a thing that I think recruiting analysts dinged him on, and coaches were a little bit weary of early into the middle stages of his high school AAU career, was he did, because he has such a good handle and can get to the paint seemingly at will, he did have a small tendency to start to play a little bit of hero ball and start to try to do too much. And you think that's something that the coaching staff can correct at the college level, but those habits can sometimes be hard to break. We've seen freshmen struggle to make that transition in that part of the game early in their college career. And it was something that after the open practice, we heard Kevin Willard say specifically, hey, the biggest thing we're working on right now with him outside of his jump shot is we need Acaden to know when to try to make the spectacular play and when to make the ordinary play. And that's critical as a point guard, but it's also critical for a guy that's capable of doing what Acaden can. Just because you can do something, you maybe shouldn't always try it, because they've got pretty good guys playing over there on the defensive end, and they've got game plans that are very specifically crafted with your strengths, your weaknesses in mind, in order to try to get you into some unfavorable
shots.
unfavorable positions that will make your decision making that much harder.
Yeah, and I think that in high school, yeah, you can take on a double team more often than not. You're not going to be able to do that in the Big East, in the physicality of the Big East. Not consistently. Every once in a while, when game's on the line or you're just feeling it, yeah, you take on that double team. You try and make that, like you said, the hero play versus the ordinary play. But the vast majority of the time, you've got to kick out of that double team and you got to find the open guy and you got to play offense, because their defense is trying to make you take a bad shot. So you better take the good shot that they're giving up to make you take the bad shot.
All right, so those are the question marks, but here are the things outside of the handle that you have to just absolutely adore. Two of his biggest assets, on top of that ability to do seemingly whatever he wants with the basketball, are his strength. Really strong for a freshman. Kevin Willard has been out there telling people this kid is outlifting some of our upperclassmen. In fact, I think he said to CJ Moore of the Athletic, fifth in the lifting competition during the preseason. Here's a kid that's been in a college lifting program for a couple months, and he's beating 21, 22-year-olds. That's a good sign for a kid that'll be able to step in and play. And it'll also help him because he's a little bit undersized in terms of defense. He's not a guy that is a liability defensively, but he's a first-year college defender. It's going to be interesting to see how he adjusts on that end of the college game. And it's 6'2", with length, but not incredible length, that you worry about a little bit when you can make up for that lack of length with strength, especially the Big East, where they'll let you wall up. And it sounds like Kaden Lewis is a guy that's capable of walling up.
Yeah, I think that would be huge for him at 6'2". If you get switched and now you're on a 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guard wing, they're going to try and take you to the basket. If you give them one good hit every once in a while and you're able to show that strength and you're able to prevent them from getting to the basket, that's just going to help you, because now they become jump shooters. You take away them being drivers and they're jump shooters. And I would prefer a 15-footer versus a layup.
No doubt about it. A contested layup or an out of control layup, or the shot that we see more and more in college basketball these days, the ball that just goes caroming off the backboard. The one that used to be an automatic substitution, you're out. Remember those back in the day? It seems like coaches are much more apt to let players play through that, and it leads to some spectacular stuff, but you don't want to see it too often, and it can really take you out of rhythm offensively. And that's something that will also be interesting to keep an eye on, how much he will run the point, and when he is running the point, how good a job he does at getting everybody else involved. That was part of his skill set and a huge asset for him in high school and on Team Durant, especially when he went over to Sidwell Friends and he had a little bit better supporting cast around him. We really saw the distribution numbers start to go up. So I think that's something to keep an eye on as well. He is, by all accounts, not just a good passer. He is a great passer. Now, he, again, will try to force some magical passes that he doesn't always have to make, but he has vision that you just don't usually see for guys coming into their freshman season.
What point guard out there doesn't try and make that hero pass every once in a while? I mean, I'm not that concerned about that. I think that he, like you said, he's a great passer. There are going to be some plays where he's trying to thread the needle, and you're going to go, what was that decision? That comes with every point guard, and it especially comes with freshmen. But for the most part, I think he's going to be solid. It's just, again, what do you do when you're in a double team, when you see the defense crashing down? Are you able to see the next play?
You know, the other thing that I think you have to love about a Kaden Lewis, the head that he has on his shoulders. Every interview you watch with this kid, everybody that's ever spoke to him, both on the record for an interview, off the record, just in passing, they all speak in such glowing terms about the kind of kid he is, how mature he is, how polished he is, and how smart he is. And again, that's not something you're always talking about 17, 18-year-old kids coming out of high school trying to make the jump into the college game. This is a kid that has a really good support system in place. Everybody talks about the family, how supportive it is, how they've taught him the right way, and how they have him well positioned to step into a spot where the limelight is going to be shined upon him. The pressure is going to be really high. There's going to be a magnifying glass on his mistakes, but there's also going to be heaps and heaps of praise when he does stuff well. The open practice, the perfect example. Everybody's out here talking about how he's the next Jalen Brunson at one practice. Villanova fans are starved for success, and they feel like Lewis is the guy that can deliver it. So it takes a special type of person that can handle that, and it seems like Lewis might be that guy.
The maturity is going to be huge for him if he is that mature and he can handle, like you said, the highs and the lows, because they're both going to come. There's no doubt about that, that at some point you're going to be low, 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 and you're going to miss a shot that people are going to talk about. And then there are going to be highs where you go off for 30, 35 and people talk about you as the next Brunson. So being able to remain even keeled in those situations is going to be super important for him. But I mean, I think that everything we've described about him makes him a great fit for the Nova program, but also for Kevin Willard as a coach. So, I mean, I don't think you could ask for more. I'm excited to watch him play. I'd love to see him for 2 or 3 years in a Nova jersey and not just one, but we'll see what happens.
So would all of Nova Nation. But again, one and done, there are things that come from that are good, that you will profit off of in terms of the trickle down effect in bringing people into the program. But yes, the tantalizing prospect of getting a second year of Kaden Lewis, it's the likely thing to happen, by the way. Let's also temper expectations in this regard. You're hearing whispers of one and done. You're hearing Kevin Willard say, if this happens, and that happens, yeah, he has the type of top end talent to be a one and done. They're not saying he is a one and done, he will be a one and done, or this is probably going to happen. Be patient with this kid. understand that there are going to be mistakes and growing pains. And that's, I think, the beautiful part about the situation he comes into. Had this been a year ago, or if Kyle Neptune and that staff had come back for another year, not sure it would have been a good situation for a freshman point guard with these type of expectations and that type of talent level to be thrown into the cauldron together and kind of see what happens. But now with Villanova fans getting the change that they thirsted, getting a new direction, kind of having some new life, and all of a sudden renewed patience, that allows Acaden Lewis, I think, to ease into this. And if it doesn't go well against BYU, or if he has a brutal game against Michigan, I don't think people are going to be going. I know people aren't going to be pleased. People want to win, but people are going to be much, much more understanding, I feel like, this year than they would have been if this was last year, or if this was still kind of up to him battling for his coaching life.
What is patience, Matt? We are terrible podcasters. We're supposed to be saying, Kaden Lewis, one and done. Mark it down right now. You know what? Kaden Lewis, Big East Player of the Year. Put it down right now. That's
why our podcasts go a little bit longer than your average podcast and your YouTube shows. Hey, we're 36 minutes in, and we should note, by the way, if you're 36 minutes into this episode of Holy Nova, there is no excuse, if you haven't done it yet, not to hit that like button at the bottom of your screen or that subscribe button. Come on, you've put up with us for that long. Help us out just a little bit. That's all.
And put your bets in now. Kaden Lewis, Big East Player of the Year.
That's David White. Now, he also said that Bill Belichick was going to win 10 games in his first year at North Carolina. So his predictions haven't been great. But Big East Rookie of the Year seems like it's very much on the table, no?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that.
I don't think he's the favorite. UConn's got some pieces coming in. St. John's, obviously. St. John's, those are first-year players, but they're not freshmen. So that would be a little bit different. But I still think that there's a really good chance that Acaden Lewis, he'll be in the thick for that award all year long.
Right now, he has to be in the top 3 of guys that are going to get looks and votes for preseason freshman of the year. I'd be surprised if he fell outside of the top 3 in preseason voting.
I agree with that. And I mean, I think that there's a chance he could go in as a favorite. We're going to find out. We're going to be at Big East Media Day. You can't make the trip all the way up from North Carolina. Been trying to talk you into it. That's maybe asking just a little bit much, but we're going to try to get up there. I will be at the very least at Big East Media Day next month, try to get some sound and get some more info for you about what to expect for the upcoming season and all the things that the Big East media is feeling about what is going to happen. All right. Put your name on a prediction. You were teasing fans and kind of giving them an idea of the best case scenario. What do you actually think this rookie year looks like for Kaden Lewis?
I think that he starts out a little slow. I'm not bad. I think he starts out a little slow. I think probably by the end of November, he starts to get better. And you're just going to see a steady ascent from the end of November through the end of the year. I think that he's going to be a solid player. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as the Big East Rookie of the Year. I wouldn't be surprised to see him shooting better. I think 36, 37% is a little too much to expect. A really big jump for him to make after one off season. But end of the year, averaging 20, 25, and probably 5 assists.
25. If he's averaging 25, I don't think we'll see Kaden Lewis play college basketball next year. No,
I could see it. I could see it. I think he's got that much skill, and the improvement is just going to be what takes him over the edge.
This is what I love about our conversations, David. When we started, you were the wet blanket, and I was the optimistic one. And now when we end the Kaden Lewis portion of the show, you're sitting here talking about him potentially, and I know you said potentially, but talking about maybe scoring 25 points per game. And I'm sitting here saying, whoa, pump the brakes, buddy. That seems optimistic.
Not over a season. I'm talking about end of the year. We're looking at the last 8 games, like he's looking really good. When beginning of the year, 12, 15, like something respectable, but nowhere near that. I think it's going to be end of the year. It's going to be mid-January before he really gets it rolling.
I think I agree with your time frame. You got me so excited here, though. I'm bringing out the old school Big East, getting ready. I mean, that's music to my ears. If that's what we end up seeing from Acaden Lewis this year, it's going to be a much quicker transition process than I was anticipating for Kevin Willard. I think that for Lewis, what we're probably going to see is a little bit of an uneven track in non-conference play. I'm very interested to see how that BYU game goes. Remember, BYU is young too. That is the one
Oh
that is
yeah.
uber talented as they are. They're pretty young at some critical positions, and their most talented guys are the young ones. So in that regard, Lewis at least kind of comes on even footing. But that's a tough game and a tough spot. Then the schedule lightens up a little bit. And I think Lewis will start to build some confidence. I think Kevin Willard will make one of his priorities building Acaden Lewis's confidence in those the 3 games at the Finn in the tournament event that they have, the Big East contest. I think you'll see them try to work Lewis and get those numbers up and get him feeling good about himself. And then we'll get a nice litmus test when you get to the portion of the schedule where it's Pitt, Wisconsin, Michigan, those games that all come in about a 3-4 week span. That'll be a good litmus test to what he needs to get righted going into Big East play. And you've been through this before on the women's basketball side of watching a team grow. And coaches always talk about that. It is obviously conference and non-conference are moments that are clear delineation lines, but there's also like that last 2-3 weeks of non-conference play where coaches they start to tinker just a little bit, and then that's where the end of December, that's where you start to then pull back and figure out what you want to be come conference action. And I think that's going to be a real interesting time for Kaden Lewis. Those last 2 weeks of December, where he is then will give us a perfect idea of how high his ceiling can go. Because the other thing about the Big East, remember, Lewis at 6 feet 2 inches tall. Rick Pitino said this. He said it a few times. The issue that the Big East has had the last few years outside of UConn in the NCAA tournament is they're not as long as the SEC and even the Big Ten. So when they get to March and they have to deal with that length, it's an adjustment for the Big East teams because they're just not used to seeing the length and athleticism combined together. And that is true, and that is a problem that the Big East is going to have to get figured out. And I think St. John's and UConn certainly have figured it out. But we'll see about the rest of the conference. But for Kaden Lewis, he's going to be facing those guys that maybe don't have that length. And I think that probably will help him as well in conference play.
Well, and I think if he takes a step back when we're when you're playing Wisconsin, Pitt, those teams, the growth he's going to get from going on the road he's going to learn so much. Even if he has a bad game, you're just going to learn so much from those games. And I agree with old Slick Rick about the length, but I think that just quite honestly, another problem is once you get into the tournament, there's no walling up. There's none of the physicality. Refs start to take that out of the game.
Unless you're Baylor. Baylor's allowed to do whatever they want.
Oh, Baylor can mug you and they won't get a foul called. But for the most part, you're starting to remove that, and you have to play a different style of basketball.
All right, so I think we're on the same page with the Kaden Lewis. Be patient, but be excited. It's going to go well. I think it's going to go better and better as the season progresses. This is a real deal. Is it a top 20 player in college basketball? I don't necessarily think so this year, but does he have that in him long term? It is a possibility. Worst case scenario, he's going to be an all-conference type player at the Big East. And the longer he's in college, the better he's going to get. So even if he is a guy that isn't a straight path right to the NBA, he's going to be an excellent college player and a guy that if he does get stuck here for a junior or even a senior season, that isn't going to be an anvil on your program. That's actually going to be a huge asset to your team because he's good. I mean, he's just a good basketball player with a lot of skills that coaches can work with, especially in the college game.
And I
David,
think Nova fans need to say, if at the end of the year, I would not be surprised if he's going to go test the market. I think he's probably I think right now he would probably be a second round guy, mid to late second round guy. So I think like he probably looks at it, especially if he finishes strong and is looking like he's trending up. I think he ultimately comes back because he's not going to be taken before the second round. But
well, just remember with the Kaden Lewis that there is a wide variance of opinions on what he is in terms of projection. I mean, he was only a top 40 recruit because there are people that have some skepticisms. And we talked about what those skepticisms are. The jump shot has to develop. If the jump shot doesn't develop, he's going to be in college for a little bit. But the indications are that the jump shot's getting better. Everybody that you talk to, Harry Peretta was at practice, Chuck Everson was at practice, talked to a couple of Villanova guys that have been there behind the scenes. He has gotten better in terms of the jump shot. It is much more consistent than it was at high school. We'll see what it is in game time, what it can be. But right now, I think the world would say, he's not on draft boards, but they are thinking that if he reaches what he is capable of, that's where he could sneak into serious conversations and be one of those, meteors that rises up, right? Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. This is what you have patiently waited for the entire show. I'm not sure if you sent this to me under a pseudonym or if this is one of your friends or if this is just one of your fans on the show. They mentioned me in no way, shape, or form, but we did get a mailbag. And please send your mail questions to holynovapodcast@gmail.com, or much better, by the way, it would help us a lot if you could just leave them in the comment section at the bottom of the screen. Again, algorithm purposes, our audience continues to grow. That'll help it get in front of more and more eyeballs here on our Holy Nova podcast. But Christopher said, you guys had a conversation about Georgetown or Villanova, who's going to be better in the long term as a program, and you didn't include the guy that used to work inside the athletic department at Georgetown University. Who is in charge of that? Sorry, that was me, and it was because David was sad about North Carolina. Be honest. And B, what does David think? Does he think that it is Villanova or Georgetown? Get in on the conversation, David, from our last episode. By the way, if you did not see it, go check it out. We had Rasheed Carbon of the Blue and Gray podcast for Georgetown on to talk about what the long-term prospects were for these two programs, how Villanova was trying to avoid some of the pitfalls that Georgetown had come their way and have left them wandering the wilderness for so long, and who can get back to the top of the Big East and even maybe college basketball sooner. All right, your turn to get in on the conversation. Who is in the better position to succeed in this version of college basketball long-term, Villanova or Georgetown?
I mean, I think it's Villanova without a question, if and only if it's because Villanova won a national championship. Well, that was, we're in 2025. Was that my math?
2016, 2018.
Yeah, my math is failing me. 7 years ago, back when we remember things like the national championship. And the fact of the matter is, Georgetown went through a long period, and I listened to Rasheed, and I understand the Georgetown fanhood, and he mentioned Esrick to JT3 to Ewing. What he failed to mention was a guy who had his hands in all of that. The Holy Grail, John R. Thompson Jr., Big John. Georgetown just allowed Big John to control that athletic department, control that basketball team for far too long. Nova, okay, you let Jay bring his guy back in Kyle Neptune. It didn't work. 3 years later, you realized it didn't work. You moved on. Jay wasn't the guy who made a call on another one of his guys. You went outside of the quote unquote Nova family. You got Kevin Willard, a guy who I think is going to be successful. I think Ed Cooley can be successful at Georgetown, and he's had more success, but he had more success in a pre NIL period. I think Nova's in a better spot financially than Georgetown. That athletic department needs a lot of help athletically or financially. So I think that it's been sooner. Nova has been in the zeitgeist. You can go into recruits' houses. You can go in the transfer portal and say, hey, we won a national championship 7 years ago. You remember that national championship. It was 2008. That was the last time Georgetown made a Final Four. I mean, half these kids weren't born yet. All of them. None of these kids were born yet in 2008 when Georgetown made the Final Four. This isn't the 90s anymore where guys are wearing Georgetown starter jackets around. So I don't see it. I think it lasted way too long, allowing John Thompson to call the shots. And that's on the athletic director, that's on president of the university, but a lot of people allowed him a lot of power and a lot of bad decisions were made.
Yeah, I think that is pretty well said. I know you feel very strongly about it. I know you got an up close view of it for a long time during your time on the staff at Georgetown under Natasha Adair when you were on the women's basketball staff. And it is a great place, a special place. They are finally starting to spend some more money, but I would agree. I think the infrastructure is in a better spot for Villanova. And I think you just kind of laid out all the reasons why. And it is very interesting, though, because you kind of got to see it behind the curtain. It is a cautionary tale for Villanova. And I think they've done a pretty good job of trying to avoid many of the potholes that crept up and sunk Georgetown. But here's the $1 million question. Kevin Willard and John Thompson III, I have heard that analogy that will the results be similar? And that's kind of that next step for Villanova. The Jay Wright days are gone, but you don't want the up and down nature that was John Thompson III's tenure at Georgetown.
Well, I think JT3 got a bad rap. I think they brought him in from Princeton. He was a Princeton offense guy who started trying to run a secondary break offense. That wasn't what he was comfortable with. And I mean, like he wanted to recruit the DC guys a lot because that's what his dad ran. But he wanted to recruit the DC guys who aren't exactly Princeton offense guys. They're guys who get up and down the court. They're super athletic. Like, it kind of got off the rails of who do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy who sets up in a half-court offense and can run it to success? Or do you want to be the guy who lets your just athletes go because they're that good? Where do you want to fall? And I think he got a little lost there.
Hey, by the way, one of my best friends in college was Rashad Corbin. I don't think I said his name accidentally, but just in case I did, Rasheen Carbon of the Bleeding Blue and Gray podcast. I think I had that right, but I was doing that to poor Rasheen the other day when we were having a conversation. I said, man, that's was one of my best friends of the world. So I apologize about that. It's those are awful close names right there. But just wanted to make sure, and that's a good podcast. Make sure you check it out. We appreciate them colluding with us. I think we're gonna do an episode on their front and get some talk. And I get the feeling maybe you might be invited at some point onto that show. You've certainly got some feelings on the inner workings, although your opinions might not be quite as popular as mine. They say I went too soft on Georgetown with some of the feedback I heard.
Oh yeah, I probably would get tarred and feathered over on the Georgetown podcast for my opinions, but that's where we are. Podcasting. Hey, remember, Acaden Lewis, Big East Player of the Year.
Oh, by the way, one last thing that we want to make sure that we mention about Acaden Lewis. He did an interview when he was coming out in high school that was a really good look at the kid. Villanova just put out a behind the scenes view of Acaden Lewis too that I thought was good, and the Villanova social media staff has done a really nice job with trying to get an inside view of who the newcomers are to the program, and recommend checking out all their stuff, obviously. And if you're 55 minutes into this podcast, I'm sure you probably have at some point, but if you somehow missed it, go check that out. But what you might have missed was Sports Stars of Tomorrow did a 5-minute sit down with Kaden Lewis and some of his family members for the kind of kid he is. And if you wondered where the name Acaden came from, David, you ever wonder that it is a unique name, right?
It's definitely one that I haven't heard before.
Okay, so his mom said that it was a combination of 3 things that she loved growing up. She was a huge fan of the arcade. She would go to the old school arcades all the time. She loved Star Wars, and she loved the never-ending story. So she combined arcade with Anakin and Atreyu, and that's how you came up with Acaden Lewis. I just thought that was. I keep going to call him Arcadia, like the forest, but Acaden Lewis, great name and a great story where the name came from.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I wish I was that. I guess
Creative with your kids' names.
Yeah.
Did you reconsider that? Because didn't your wife have some hand in the names of your kids? It seems like that was a little critical of your wife. I know she's probably not going to be watching 56 minutes in.
Well, my
better
wife,
hope not now.
Well, my wife wanted some names for our son that I just couldn't allow, like Grayson. Couldn't allow it.
Grayson Allen. Right.
Cameron.
How many vetoes did you get?
2. So Grayson and Cameron were out. No way I'm gonna have a Cameron indoor stadium in my house.
Cameron?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that wouldn't work. Would not work.
But I mean, we're a David and a Matt, so apparently our parents weren't very creative either.
I went straight biblical on it.
Exactly.
They weren't really going deep into the book of names. There's no doubt
about it. What are the top 50 names? Let's just throw a dart at them and see what happens.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. I actually somehow I never win anything in my marriage, and I was able to win the argument on my daughter's name. My wife wanted Eleanor. I said Juliana, so we went with Juliana. I thought that was a good win by me. And then the deal was, if it was a daughter, she was going to name. The other thought was Cecilia, but her friend actually named their kid Cecilia, so that was out. And then when we had our second, they were going back and forth. If it was a girl, 100%, Kylie was going to get to name her Eleanor. It was a boy, and I got Jack Janice right out there. It just slipped it right through. So somehow I went for 2 for 2. I'll let you decide whether they were good names or not, but I couldn't believe I won both of those contests.
I got Marshall. I won Marshall. It was between Marshall and Austin, and one Marshall because I said, okay, I can just say he was named after Thurgood Marshall or Marshall Mathers or all the other Marshalls out there.
When you told me that your son's name was Marshall, I'm embarrassed to admit that I did. I said, "Come on, you named him after Marshall Mathers," and then when you said no, I said, "Do you name him after Marshall from How I Met Your Mother?" Never occurred to me. Thurgood Marshall. That was pretty embarrassing when I was talking. I'm married to a lawyer. You'd think that I would have that knowledge on the top of my tongue, but no, a lawyer naming him after a great Supreme Court justice. I don't know how I missed that one.
Oh man, yeah. So my wife doesn't know that, so we're gonna keep that a secret. That's between us here, podcasters.
All right. Well, you better be nice to me now, all of a sudden, or otherwise we'll send that timestamp right over to Allison. Hey, David. Later in the week, you know what we're going to talk about?
What's that?
Upsets. You know why?
Because I'm upset.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you still are upset, but no, you know who Villanova football plays this week?
Is that the Penn State game or?
Penn State Nittany Lions. I got one for you to think about until the next episode. If Villanova football beat Penn State, is that a bigger upset than when Villanova basketball beat Georgetown for a national championship in 1985? Don't answer it now. That's our next episode. We'll have a lot of other stuff about this year's team. We'll probably look at some of the more underrated players on this Villanova roster. That's a show that we're also looking at doing, and how the newcomers will gel. But that will do it for this edition of Holy Nova. Again, please like and subscribe to the Big East Energy Network. Like the video at the bottom of the screen. Subscribe and check it out if you want to listen and don't want to see these ugly faces. We understand it. We're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. And again, just help us with the algorithm. Click that like button. You're an hour in, for goodness sake. Please do it. For David White, I'm Matt Janis. This has been Holy Nova.